This is the May 30th, 2017 meeting of the Raleigh Conservation Commission. The meeting is hereby called to order under the authority of Mass General Law 131, Section 40, the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw. Notice is given that both video and audio recordings will be made of this meeting. The agent will now call the roll call for attendance.
Bob Garner, absent. Judy Keys,
Present.
Sam Strife, absent. Arthur Page,
Here.
Kurt Turner,
Here.
Howard Vogel.
Here.
We have a quorum present.
All right. Is everybody signed, that's in attendance, signed the slip in the back? Thank you. All right. Administrative, payroll, and vendor.
I have the vendor bill. Postage reimbursement coming out of the notice of intent monies.
I'm gonna need a cookie. I didn't have any lunch today. It's been a day from
Everybody
hell.
showed up.
This is dinner
Yes.
and lunch.
That's the backup invoice for that. And then if I may, the Commission's direction, I've prepared a letter of appreciation to be sent to
Yes.
former Commissioner David Delmonico, if you could just sign above your name. Okay, very good. Next, I guess we have minutes.
Okay, minutes, payroll.
No, payroll is next week.
We have the minutes of the May 10th, the October 20th, 2:15, and November 10th, 2:15. We'll do them one at a time. Did
Let's-
everybody?
Correction, there's only one set of minutes that we're able to complete.
Oh,
Proposed
okay, yeah, I
to
saw
the
that.
commission, so that's the May 10th from the last meeting.
All right, everybody have a chance to review the May 10th?
And I'd like to highlight some changes, some suggestions that Commissioner Turner provided to the office. On page 2 of 4, the second item, the request for determined applicability for 982 Haverhill Street. Within the paragraphs there, I'm just gonna read how they've been edited a bit. The commission reviewed Agent Bazelak's memo dated May 10th, 2017. They discussed the lack of isolated vegetated wetlands designation on the sketch plan provided, period. Mr. Abuzara stated his concerns about the existence and his perception of the history of the isolated vegetated wetland, and suggested the commission permit Mr. Kevin Kapenko to install 2 pipes through his driveway at 970 Haverhill Street to drain the isolated vegetated wetland, period. Agent Bazelak advised the applicant that such activity couldn't be authorized by means of a permit application from this applicant, as 970 Haverhill Street is the private property of another owner who is not party to the current application. And that's how that was
Yes.
better explained. On page 3 of 4, second item towards the bottom of the page, which is a new notice of intent application for 101 Main Street. Agent Bazelak discussed his recommendations for possible project conditions, including establishing a 25-foot minimum width, no cut, no disturbance zone, and including a preliminary condition for further discussion as to basing a third growing season monitoring requirement in the event that the removal of invasive plants up to a specified percentage reduction is not achieved within 2 growing seasons. So we added an explanation about the invasives control. And that actually is it. Just those 2.
Everybody agrees with that? Do I hear a motion to accept that,
So moved.
May 10th, 2017? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, accepted. Thank you very much.
The next item will be a gift of land from Gateway 2 Trust, 1997.
Yes, town council has reviewed the prepared deed and accompanying documentation and has deemed it acceptable. The Gateway 2 Realty Trust has signed their trustees certificate and has started signatory on the deed. The next step after the Conservation Commission would be to, the signatory page to the Board of Selectmen would be the final step. We have also been provided with the Mylar of the survey plan so that it can be recorded at the same time the deed and the trust document. And the gifter has also provided us with prepayment of the fees for registry to accomplish the recording. So if the commission would so choose, I propose to accept the gift of land by the Conservation Commission on this May 30th, 2017, by signing above here.
Where is the land?
This is the land off of.
This is
Yeah,
off
we-
of
one.
Batchelder Meadow,
Batchelder Meadow, thank
out
you.
behind Swanson's Granite
Yeah.
and Artistic Landscape.
Just one.
We've been talking about it.
Two
for-
parcels out
for a
there?
2
year.
parcels, yep, along Batchelder Brook.
So they're finally able to monument those?
Yeah, they did some iron rods as well as some drill holes on the portions that were not
That's good news.
submerged.
Yeah, you're right. Going with a,
Good.
Yeah, no, that's good.
that's great news.
Oh, someone else's name.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your hard work on that.
Candidate for appointment?
Actually, at this point in time, I would like to just mention for the record, as well as provide documentation, that Arthur Page has been reappointed to serve, whoops, I'm sorry. You only need yours. And also Howard Vogel has been reappointed to serve on the commission, which we thank you very much, and Judy Keys.
Congratulations, everybody.
Well, thank you for continuing your volunteer service to the community and protecting our wetland resource areas. It's very important.
Oh, yeah, bring us the soup.
Yeah, just take those and go to the town clerk's office.
Great. Okay,
Okay.
that brings us to
Yes.
introduction of a proposed candidate for the commission.
That would be me. My name's-
Just introduce yourself.
I'm Dan Shinnick. I live down here on Pleasant Street, and I'm interested in the role that the commission plays, becoming more a part of it in the community, and I think I bring excuse me, perhaps a unique skill set that might be of particular use in my background in cartography. So I think that I could be a valuable member of the committee, if you were to accept me.
All right. Now, have we, the young lady that Diane brought in has backed out. She gave me a letter, so to that extent. So at this point, I should have you write a letter stating that we have,
Well, we actually have to wait for Mr. Shinnick to express his desire for appointment to the
to
selectmen.
the selectmen, okay.
Once that's actually put in for their,
Is that in for their next meeting?
As long as that is not tomorrow, it
No.
will be.
Next Monday, I believe.
Okay.
yeah, so then I will be happy to work on a letter of support. We became acquainted by his family coming and participating at the trail work day on the Dodge Reservation, where he also endeared himself to us by, since it was a little drizzly and cold or whatever, his family went and procured coffee for us at the end of about 2 hours of pruning and trimming.
All right, if you could, I'll see you
Yeah.
anyway, but I would like
Yeah,
to
so
go to
we'll
that.
do a letter of support.
Yeah, no, I'd like to go to it too.
How long have you lived in Raleigh, Dan?
2 years this April.
Where'd you live before that?
Before that was Salem for about 10, and then I was in Marlboro for 3. And I grew up in Lynn originally.
Wow. You're a 495, 128 person.
Yeah,
Have you done any community service in any of those other towns?
I've done.
It's always nice to start.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is where we intend to stay, so
I think you'll find it rewarding.
I do.
Very good.
Thanks.
A legal ad? First determination?
This is a legal notice of Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance with the Wetland Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40, as amended by the Town of Raleigh Wetland Protection Bylaw. A public meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 30th, 2017, 7:45, Room 5 of the Town Hall Annex at 39 Central Street, to consider the request for determination of applicability to the application by Stephen Hayes for the proposed construction of a subsurface sewage disposal system, possibly within 100 foot of the bordering vegetated wetlands at 46 Leslie Road, map 7, parcel 18, lot 3 in Raleigh. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Good, Tom Manetta, Thomas Manetta Incorporated, representing the Raleigh Animal Hospital, the Hazes tonight. We were here a few months ago under determination as well for permission to do the soil testing out here. Again, we filed a determination, we've designed the system, which is laid out here in orange, which is right in the area of the, again, where we had initially proposed the soil testing. The orange near the house, we have a tank and a pump chamber. We'll be pumping under the existing driveway. Be cutting the driveway, pumping underneath it, and pumping up to the system up by Leslie Road. The system itself is 57 feet from the bordering vegetated wetland.
Now, that's where you would originally
Correct.
thought you were going to put.
Yep,
yeah,
yep,
so
it actually worked out, the soils were suitable there, we were able to design a system without infringing upon the existing driveway, and trying to minimize some of the major tree cutting out there. There will be some, you know, I think we talked about 7, 8 major, you know, larger trees will be cut.
Where was the previous?
The previous system is right there.
Directly adjacent to the
Directly
wetlands.
adjacent, and actually, you know, the wetlands.
Had it failed, or you just improving?
We're just improving, it's a voluntary upgrade.
Yeah.
Yep.
You use a lot, they use a lot of water, right?
Well, there's only, they don't use as much as you'd think. It's 800 gallons a day is what the system's designed for, so. It's not like the other one I did, I think it was like 4,000 up the street. But
Okay, yeah, that,
yeah, exactly.
Is this just an office, or is it also their home?
It is also their home. It's a two-bedroom unit on the second floor.
anybody have any questions? All right. And you have read what,
I have, yep,
Right,
we've met off the
and-
site and I've met that. Read that as well.
Is there a revised plan submitted in regards to this? So, really what was discussed on the site was the activity and how that would relate to putting in appropriate erosion control with the driveway, which has to be maintained as access for the residents or whatever. So the revision really centers on erosion control that's around the tank installation right here. Instead of it crossing the road, we pretty much evaluated that. Trenching for that shorter distance is usually done right in the same day, backfilled, as well as their driveway, they have wooden curving, landscape timbers that basically capture and would provide a barrier that's raised and would prevent any eroded materials. And also getting in and out, we figured that if they did move erosion control back and forth, it would just not end up being installed well. So the thought was to concentrate on adjusting the erosion control over around the field, tightening it up, and also leaving an access area so that they could just remove probably the wattle or filter sock on the edge of the road, do the work on the field, and then place that back on the edge of the pavement when they ended at night or when inclement weather
yeah, I
was
think
forecast.
we spoke when you were doing the dig holes.
Right.
Well, and
That
also,
was-
the firm he's using, we've had experience with doing this in some other, I hate to use the word problematic, because it's not really a problem, it's just working correctly with the excavator and their equipment so that you're not putting fixed barriers staked in place that are gonna end up getting in their way, because it doesn't work with an
Right.
excavator and a straw wattle, we know who loses.
Where's the reserve on this?
There is no reserve. So under repair, you don't need a reserve area, so.
Now, what is the land out back? How come you didn't,
Oh, out here?
I remember you said something about, is that?
Well, we have a well
Wetland?
here.
Oh, right.
Yep, and then by the time you get past that well setback, that this wetlands is.
Property is
coming through.
fairly extensive and it's mostly just forested,
Right.
forested
Right.
wetlands and
Yeah.
just undeveloped.
All right.
So the recommendation, unless the commission has any other concerns, is for consideration of a negative determination option number 3 with the numbered conditions that are expressed on the memo of May 30th.
Do I hear such a motion? So moved. Second? All in favor? Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, who seconded?
Judy.
Howard?
Julie and I were both.
Yeah, Judy, you put her on.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You.
When do you plan on doing that? When it dries out or what?
Yeah, if it ever dries out, right?
It's positive, when it dries up.
Yeah.
Has everyone who came into the meeting signed on the clipboard for signing in? If that could be passed around.
Right here.
Mr. Schinick, could you pass that towards the back? Thank you.
3 p.m. All right, it's a legal notice for the Raleigh Conservation Commission. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40, as amended by the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw, public meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 30th, 2017, at 8 o'clock, Room 5, the Town Hall Annex at 39 Central Street, to consider request for determination of applicability for the application filed by Stephen Berdino for the proposed construction of an 18 by 36 in-ground pool, wraparound deck, possibly with a 100-foot buffer zone bordering vegetated wetlands at 73 Saunders Lane, map 23, parcel 86, lot 11 in Rowley. You guys got the floor.
All right, Brent's been down to the property, so.
If you just introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry,
to the
yeah,
TV.
I'm sorry, Steve already know, I'm the resident, 30 Sarah's Lane.
I'm Sean Canning, own Precision Pool,
Okay.
Clipper Pool.
This is where we kind of mapped out where we're gonna be putting the 18 by 36 pool. It's gonna be, right now, it looks like we're gonna be doing a 4-foot deck around the outside of it. The decking may come up a little bit closer. We wanna try to come right off the deck, from the deck here. They'll be coming out from this side, right down through the driveway, entering right in through here. 22 foot off that, I think the no-cut zone is what we sort of
Yes,
take it off.
yeah, yeah, that's what I've got.
Yeah,
Yeah, 22 feet to the no cut, and the no cut there is 10 feet, I believe.
right. And so, nothing fancy, it's just gonna be a rectangular pool. Pretty simple.
Okay, just reading through. Have you seen the recommendations that Brent?
Yep, I got it today, so Sean was able to look for it, I think.
Looks all, yep.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to add to your recommendations from the visual or anything?
No, I just wanted to say that this is kind of an example of the cross-fertilization that goes on with my service for the city of Haverhill, because this is, these are taken from requirements that we've worked on in the city of Haverhill for pool applications. And hopefully, there's nothing there that's impractical or whatever, but
I didn't think so.
chlorinated water is
Right.
not a wetlands friend.
Right, sure.
Flora and
Right.
fauna just do not like
Right.
that, but it does make very nice potable drinking water for us, or swimmable water.
Yeah.
So we've just, over the years with many more applications in the city, had worked on this with the agent there, and he was nice enough to let me.
Yeah. A lot of it doesn't apply to, there's no
Well, right.
backwashing, there's no.
Exactly, but
Very rarely
those
take
are
any
some of
water
the
out.
options
Sure.
that do exist. and
Absolutely.
And so you just kind of put the suite together and,
Yeah.
okay, what's applicable, you follow.
Sure.
If it's not applicable, don't pay attention to it.
Right.
Anybody have any questions?
And there aren't any pictures, because I couldn't see just showing you a flat, slightly sloping grass
That's the only
lawn.
thing I have. It's,
Yeah,
it's flat. It's fairly flat there.
Yes.
Yeah, but we're gonna bring in some fill.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they have, we're gonna put a little retaining wall in there and level it off, so it's not,
So there-
everything will be trucked out of there.
So more than likely, we talked about just sort of a J hook of the erosion control coming around and extending over here. My understanding is that the access was gonna be through your landscaped area off the end of the driveway.
Correct.
So therefore, they'd come straight down. And so, just a slight little hook there and coming up over here with straw wattle or filter sock would be sufficient to protect any loosened sediments from migrating to where we don't want them to go.
If nobody has any comments, Commission may decide to choose a hearing and consider issuance of a negative determination, option 3, which both incorporating all the special conditions, 13 of which Brent has put above, the individual has read. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Do you have to come back, is that it? What do we call for inspection?
I'll send you the document. Oh, and the one thing, first off, let me get the signature sheet going around here. Do you have a card? Because I wasn't sure
Horrible
about,
self.
I wasn't sure about your email address that was put on the application, so maybe if you can just
Yeah.
help me out a little bit here. Amesbury.byp
Yep, at gmail.com.
at gmail.com, okay,
You got it.
very good.
Very good, thanks, yeah, anything goes in.
I'll mail the original to Mr. Burns' email, but copy you on a scan.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
all right,
Great, thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you. This brings us to our 8:15 item. Legal notice from the Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40, as amended by the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Public hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 30th, 2017, at 8:30 p.m. The Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider the request for determination of applicability for the application by David Tibbetts, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, for invasive plant control, mechanical, chemical techniques, possibly within a salt marshland, subject to coastal storm flowage, the Great Marsh, ACEC, at multiple properties, see Raleigh landowners listing, owned by various personages in the list office at Stackyard Road, Pappas Road, I-95, Mass DOT in Raleigh. You sent me one of those letters, but I'm not on your map.
Well, that's a
I
good thing.
usually am, but,
And we'd like to keep it that way.
yeah.
David Tibbetts, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Parker River National Wildlife Refuge. And we've been working on controlling pepperweed now for about 11 years in the Great Marsh. And our mapping has showed we've got about 2,100 roughly points that we've located. You're lucky in Raleigh, you've got less than 50. It's, yeah. And good news last year, about 10% of those sites we found clear of pepperweed. So the work we've been doing is starting to show some progress. And we hope they remain clear. And we'd like to continue to work on controlling perennial pepperweed in the Great Marsh and in Raleigh.
Rick?
So when the application was first submitted, we have since that time accomplished notification with the copy of the application as required by the regulations to private property owners who are not the applicant for this particular application. The commission also has a past record of being supportive of invasive species control, specifically by Parker River National Wildlife Refuge. They have staff that is both qualified on the scientific side of things, as well as they have licensed certified applicators of the chemical treatments. And also, as I was talking with Mr. Tibbetts today, they go a little further by the fact that they actually formulate their own herbicide so that they can make sure that there aren't other proprietary things, additives or solvents that are mixed in there that might have unintended detrimental impact to other flora and fauna. And so the recommendation for the commission to consider is basically the same as the decision we issued, I believe, in 2010. And that is to consider a negative determination, both options 2 and option 3. Now, option 2 says the work described in the request is within an area subject to protection under the Act, but will not remove, fill, or dredge that area. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent. Some of their activities are going to take place directly in regulated resource areas such as salt marsh, coastal bank. Other portions of their activities, like the photograph that I'm displaying up there, are in the buffer zone, directly adjacent off the edge of the salt marsh. And so the commission had also utilized option number 3, where the work described in this request is within the buffer zone as defined in the regulations, but will not alter an area subject to protection under the Act. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent, following to this, or subject to, excuse me, the following conditions. So in 2010, we had stated that herbicide label directions would be followed. First aid kits with water would be available. Number 2, spray applications occur on days with little or no wind to prevent drift to non-target plants, and I think that's your standard operating procedure anyway. Any dislodged soil from hand pulling be packed firmly back in place. Hand-pulled plant material to be tightly bagged and transported out of the salt marsh for drying and burning. Now, that could also be disposed of. Now, from the site visit today, we had a volunteer that we extracted, because I'd never pulled pepperweed before, so got a chance to pull it. It sort of has a root, and you're gonna forgive me, I'm gonna again equate to dandelions. It has kind of a primary root going down, so you just reach down, grab the thing and pull it up. Now, unfortunately, lots of times it'll break off, and I'm told that, what, 1 inch or
About a
3
1 inch,
centimeters?
1 inch length of root fragment can regenerate
Well,
another plant.
Can regenerate. So there actually isn't a lot of soil disturbance that goes on with this. It doesn't have a whole bunch of, if you get it early, it doesn't have a whole bunch of lateral roots that are pulling up whole clumps of sod with it. So anyway, my recommendation for the commission to consider is basically issuance of this determination. Now, we have in the file, we have a list of all the known sites. There may be the discovery of other sites, which we will just have to work with Mr. Tibbetts, because again, the regulations require that this hearing process be advertised and they be informed, so.
Did you have anybody object, any landowners?
No,
No, okay.
in fact, there were,
You actually
Most
shared
of
with me
them were-
today that you had somebody called that wanted to make sure that this was going to occur.
yeah,
Oh, I called you up and said, yeah, you can do it, but I'm not on here, as far as I see, but,
yeah.
but yeah. Do I hear such a motion? So moved. Second? All in favor? Right?
Aye.
Yeah, no, I think it's excellent, we gotta do this. I mean, when you see the places that they've lost control,
Yeah, yeah, and that, we don't want to
Phragmites
get.
sticks out where I am, especially doing the marsh hay.
Yeah.
Seems to be more obvious in this stuff.
Yeah, that's, western states have got a much bigger problem. It first came into California and then spread throughout just about all the western states. And it's toxic to livestock.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's not, it won't kill them, it's not deadly, but it does make them sick. So they've got much more of a battle out there, it's more widespread. Well, that's
All right, well,
I like.
thank you. Yeah,
let's return
It's
to
not,
jumped
that.
over
it's not up for it anyway, time.
Well, but they requested a continuance and we need to,
Yes.
we need to open it in order to be able to
You got to open
continue.
it in order to close it. It's fine. Yeah, it's the 8:15.
Yeah, just a second, I gotta put my hands on it.
This is a legal notice for the Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance with the Wetland Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40. As amended by the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw, a public hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 30th, 2017 at 8:15 in Route 5 Town Hall Annex at 39 Central Street to consider a request for the determination of applicability for the application filed by Bruce Tompkins, Tompkins Charters Trust, for the proposed determination of the perennial intermittent status of an unnamed water course that flows from Daniels Road behind Emily Lane at land off Daniels Road, map 9, parcel 23 in Raleigh, Mass.
Okay. And his emailed request.
And we have a letter, good morning Brent. Please consider your RDA request at your next meeting. Thank you, John Coolis. So I would suggest that we,
Need a
We
a
need a
motion
motion.
for a continuance.
For a
Got
continuance.
a question before we do that.
Yep.
This talks in terms of the water course that flows from Daniels Road to behind Emily Lane. Now, in talking with you the other day, I had the impression we were basically talking about from the point of the impoundment and that portion of the stream that goes to and through the golf course. Am I wrong on that, or is it the whole stream we're talking about back to Daniels Road?
It is the whole stream as it appears on the Tompkins Desjardins Trust property, which does not quite go all the way to Daniels Road. But the focus is substantially on the portion down gradient from the earthen berm that has, I'm told, has a history of when there was ice production out there. In the past, that was determined to be perennial because the regulations state a presumption that when there is an impoundment that is interfering with the flow of water, that you are to presume that down gradient is perennial in nature. The USGS topo map also shows that as a deeper blue, which is supposed to be a de facto indication of the perennial status of that section of
Can
the
you define
stream.
perennial?
Flows all year,
Thank you.
water in the
Not
channel.
you know,
Yeah, all
And the
thank
way
you.
you can determine that it is not perennial is that if you are able to submit 4 documented field observations during a time that is not a declared drought, where you have a dry stream bed
Oh, okay.
with no water flowing through it.
And that is actually,
4 different times.
that's actually behind the original golf course, if I remember correctly.
Well, it goes right into the golf
Right, it goes into
It
it.
goes into the golf course.
Through the
Yeah.
golf course?
Goes
Yeah,
through
it goes
the-
to their irrigation ponds.
Yeah.
It goes under that first kind of
That bridge.
covered bridge
Covered bridge.
that the golf carts go
There's a
over.
lot of water that's been running. I play on that course a lot, live there. There's a lot of water.
I guess one of the perspective I would share in this, and it's subject to debate, but if we could limit the focus of this application to from the point of impoundment to the edge of the golf course, the near edge of the golf course property, I would hate to have the determination made that on the other side of the golf course that is inclusive of that, which isn't this
No,
particular piece of
we
property.
have to stay, we're limited by the legal boundaries of the Tompkins Desjardins Trust property. So we can only deal with up gradient from the Raleigh Country Club property up to, I think there's one private ownership before that water course goes underneath Daniels, so. But that's what they've applied for, and
That's
that's
a
what they've
long
submitted.
stretch.
It is a long stretch, but the commission in, like I said, the commission in the past has evaluated that water course. And I've also been out there on a fairly frequent basis with the permitting that occurred for Marion Way there. And so I know that the upper portions of that do dry out. I've observed it numerous times that it has no flow.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so
So we should really just entertain the motion for a continuance to our meeting of, where's my agenda? June something, is it June 10th?
it is
Excuse
June
me,
20th.
June 20th.
June
June
20th.
20th.
Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Well, all those properties on whatever circle that is,
Emily,
Emily, also abut that stream.
they
Yes.
back up into it.
Well,
The-
So there's
some,
numerous properties.
some of them on the outside edge, yeah.
I presume they own to the center point of that stream.
On that side of the road is
No.
one or two houses.
No. In many cases, for whatever reason, their boundaries of their subdivision lots
Don't make
do
it.
not use
make
the
it-
center line of the water course.
There was a reason for that, I think, on the.
Might be
development
square
subdivision.
footage that they had to have or something like that.
Just
but no, you cannot.
Right, so so the goal is that they would like to downgrade that from a perennial to make it, and there
Well,
would be, that.
We're not supposed to be deliberating this
No,
application.
I'm just trying to
but-
understand what they're doing.
But,
We'll
so,
find out.
they,
Find out? Okay,
yes, we are going to evaluate data that they've submitted
okay.
that specifically addresses whether the impoundment impounds anything.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to get clarity as to
Yep.
where this is heading.
I'm not discussing this application, I'm discussing the boundaries of that area. If that gets developed on the other side, which presumably that's eventually going to happen, is that raises the question of where the property boundaries on those lots come to whether they come to the center of that stream or not.
Well, that hasn't been subdivided yet.
No, I know, but it's likely to at some point. But what I'm getting at is that if those boundaries on either side don't go to the center point, that leaves an area in there that perhaps
We'll end up with.
we'll end up with, yes.
Yeah,
Well, because the lots on Emily Lane, that subdivision was carved out of the overall ownership of the Tompkins Desjardins Trust, there is no reason why they would not base any boundaries starting at their now existing boundary line at the rear of those lots and going to wherever they want them to go to.
Right.
So I don't think there's going to be a divorced backland consisting of the stream in there, but here again,
Either that or those
they
boundaries
have
have
the
to
legal,
cross.
they have the legal right to have their boundaries go however they
I
want.
understand that. I'm just
There's some- you can- so
suggesting
some of them do
potential
go-
future opportunity for them to make a tax
Not
donation to the town.
Sure,
of that
on that
property.
side.
He's got a lot of acreage out there, yes, there's, and not knowing what the lay of the land is, there might be areas that are not capable of supporting any type of development out there. There's always that option.
Having walked that on both sides, my guess is that it's very developable on the other side.
Finished our 8:45. I know we're early, but if the people are here, we might as well.
Sure. What do you mean we're early? How could we possibly be early?
Fine with me.
we got an early morning flight,
Where you going?
North Carolina, Raleigh. I'm going to Raleigh. The other Raleigh, you know.
So you're already there.
Yeah, can't get there from here.
All right, this is a legal notice, Raleigh Conservation Commission, in accordance with the Wetland Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40 is amended by the Town of Raleigh Wetland Protection Bylaw. Public hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 30th, 2017, at 8:45 PM, Room 5, Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider a notice of intent of application filed by William N. and Cheryl L. Dumaine for the proposed construction of a subsurface sewage disposal system, possibly within a 100-foot buffer zone of bordering vegetated wetlands at 531 Newburyport Turnpike, which is map 22, parcel lot 35 in Rowley, Mass. And I take it you are?
Good evening, my name is Charles Johnson. I'm a civil engineer with CG Johnson Engineering. And a month and a half or so ago, we had filed a request for determination of applicability for soil testing. And I was not able to attend that particular meeting, but Mr. Dumaine was here. And the property is, if you're familiar with the Fox Meadow Condominium
Yep.
Association, it's the single-family home just before you continue into the Fox Meadow.
The one that's for sale?
What's that?
The one that's for sale?
Yes.
Beautiful little house.
Yeah.
From the exterior.
Yeah, and so the so just to the upper portion of the screen here is the access road into the Fox Meadow Condominium Association property. And what you see to the left is the edge of bordering vegetated wetland, and then we have the 100-foot buffer zone shown with in green with the line and circles. We've performed our soil testing with Ed Gallagher, and we're proposing to have a septic tank pumping up to a drip dispersal leaching system, and about 8 inches or so of grade higher than what is existing now. And so there is a portion of the drip dispersal field that will be within the buffer zone.
Right.
And pretty straightforward project. It's all grass currently, and Brent was out there before we soil tested, as well as after I staked out where the drip dispersal is going to be. And for erosion protection, we're proposing some straw wattle that would be staked in the area that you see.
All right. Now, is this a system failure or just a system upgrade?
It's a system failure, because they're in the process of selling, they
Right.
needed to have a Title V inspection, and it failed the inspection. And so we're proceeding with an upgrade due to the failure.
How does something like that fail? Just as curiosity, I mean, is this a typical failure when you do a Title V upgrade check, or?
It's, well, first of all, that's a great question. In this particular case, it failed due to the fact that the leaching pits are in the seasonal high water table. And so when they did their inspection of the system, found the distribution box, the level of the liquid in the distribution box was higher than where it's supposed to be.
All right, Brent, you've been out taking a look at this?
Yes. And again, I wasn't gonna bother to give you expansive photographs of maintained lawn. So the main consideration here is that there's both activities of the installation of the new system as well as decommissioning of the old system. So the erosion control barrier has been appropriately sited to tie into a landscape retaining wall that comes off the rear wooden deck. And then that arcs out, capturing both the field installation, which is in the buffer zone with a little bit of filling to bring the grade up for that, and the decommissioning of the pre-existing, is it cistern or tank or?
Those are
what
leaching
was-
pits.
Leaching pits, so the leaching pit is going to be busted up and filled with sand, I think is the normal modus operandi for.
Anybody have any questions?
Well, so, okay, so we got a couple other little things going on here.
I didn't see any of that, but I had to ask.
DEP has not issued a file number for this, which I just discovered, unfortunately, checking a little late here tonight.
Sure.
They indicate something about the clearance of the submitted check, so that's not necessarily an environmental issue. And more than likely the commission can proceed just as long as we vote contingent upon us getting a file number, because we can't issue an order without the file number. The other thing I wanted to ask the commission about, this property hadn't been evaluated before for the proximity of the bordering vegetated wetlands and the development of the property. So I didn't know whether the commission wanted to consider voting to restrict the pre-existing edge of shrubbery and woods here to be variable width, no cut, no disturbance zone. Their paddock or whatever comes very close to delineated bordering vegetated wetland, but then outside the paddock and off the rear backside, what I'll call the backside of the stable barn area, there isn't any development activity. But I just didn't know, lots of times we take into consideration where we might possibly end up putting a restriction for no cut, no disturbance, especially when it's in very close proximity to bordering vegetated wetlands.
No, those are shrubs that are down.
Well, that's the typical survey nomenclature for showing you that here we transition from manicured, maintained real estate to bushes, shrubbery, saplings, in this case forest, as well as the terrain is a little spotty in there too.
I would think that
I
would
just
be-
figured I'd bring it up because lots of times the commission does
Yeah.
say, okay, this is now going to be a restricted area. Obviously, to be cleared, altered, pruned, or whatever, they should be submitting a request to determine applicability if they did want to do any further lawn expansion, but,
I would say just, they don't have to post it for the 25-foot, no cut, no disturb.
well, here
It's
again,
already
and
manicured.
you actually,
Yeah.
you don't have to do anything at all.
Right.
It's
I
a
would
regulated area, before cutting or pruning, they should come in to
Right.
get a
If they're
permit.
gonna do anything, then I would suggest they come in, but if they're not gonna do anything, I would say just let it go.
Unless they wanna have two simultaneous polo pony matches out there that actually got enough lawn that they probably will never think about pruning and clearing anything again, but you never know what might happen, but they have a lot of acreage to mow.
All
Or the
right,
new owners will have a lot of acreage to mow.
anybody have any problems or questions with this? So,
So my recommendation is the commission consider issuance of an order of conditions with typical project conditions contingent upon obtaining a DEP file number, whereupon the public hearing will close and will issue an order.
do I hear such a motion? Second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Terrific, thank you very much.
There's been, just to correct the record here, there's been no one else in attendance. Otherwise, I would have said for you to ask for any input for someone. I've recognized all the folks that have been here as being other parties and not being abutters.
Yes. Well, there, you have school street people, right?
That's me.
All right.
Un momento, por favor.
We're early, but I don't see where I'll be any trouble.
Right here.
You still got two more cookies if you want them. Hold.
I'm done now. I'm sugared out, man. I got coffee.
He wants to be able
I
to go
got
to
coffee
bed.
and sugar. I'm
You gotta get up at 5.
I'm just gonna stay up. I'm just not going to bed.
There's no memo on this, right?
No, there isn't a memo on this because we need to talk. We need to talk. But first,
Yep.
read the legal notice.
Legal notice, Raleigh Conservation Commission. accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40, as amended by the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Public hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 30th, 2017, at 9 p.m. 15 Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider the notice of intent of application filed by Adam Walter for the proposed demolition of existing deck and construction of an 18 by 56 foot combination deck and screened porch, possibly within a 100-foot buffer zone bordering vegetated wetland and 200 feet of the riverfront area for ox pasture brook at 35 School Street, map 24, parcel 122 in Raleigh, Mass.
I got certified letters.
Thank you.
Let me know when you're ready.
Trying to get it so that everything fits on one screen there. And color photos, oh
For the last house on the right before the brook heading down here.
Yes.
no. Okay, sir.
Tyler Ferrick with DeRose Environmental, Abby Manzi with DeRose Environmental as well. Property 35 School Street, property owner is Adam Walter. I guess I'll give a general info and then we'll go into the other matters. There's an existing dwelling currently on the property. There's asphalt driveway here, and there's the existing stairs that go up to the house entrance on the right side, which is right here on the site plan. And the proposed is this brown area here, which is gonna be the elevated deck. And the old one will be taken down, and then it'll lead into a screened-in porch in the back of the property. We have Ox Pasture Brook, which is located, it goes right underneath School Street, so it's probably somewhere around here, kind of loops around the outskirts of the property. So the first 100 feet is this blue line, so it's in the outer 200 foot, which the whole entire property is within the riverfront. There's an existing bordering vegetative wetland line, which is the green, and then the 25-foot no-build is off of that. So it does catch the left corner of the proposed elevated screened-in porch off of the backside. Historically, you can see this land has been worked quite a bit. There's a lot of elevated piles of dirt out here, so it's kind of poorly drained in that aspect, grading-wise. And you can see the structure right here. This is where the water comes out of the basement from the pump and goes out into the wetland. So the wetland creeps up in that location, and on this abutting property over here, you can see this hooks back. That's also from another basement sump pump as well. And then it occurred last week in the file as Brent was going through before the hearing. There was an old enforcement order from 2010, which is for excess cutting located in this location in the rear. Brent met with Adam Walter, which he was a new homeowner at that time when he first moved in, and he was getting a little crazy out there cutting, didn't know it was wetland. Brent met with him on site, told him he couldn't cut any more, and he and Brent went out there to verify the conditions, because Brent had a few measurements taken on his sketch on the enforcement order, and after we took measurements and looked at the conditions that were there, it appeared that he was still cutting and maintaining it as lawn, in which, by taking the measurements, it was pretty close. This is the current wetland flagging on site, and the measurements were, on this one, it was just shy, probably like 3 feet of where the excessive cutting was historically, and I guess currently as well. And at some point, it was discussed Adam wasn't supposed to cut anymore, and then historically things fell out of hand. things got
Since
forgotten.
I drive up and down School Street on a fairly regular basis, because Commissioner Keys works at Salt Marsh Antiques, and I go over and gather her signature for payroll and stuff, I had noticed back in 2010 that all of a sudden, a fair amount of the herbaceous and kind of shrubbery or brambles or whatever, all of a sudden turned red, like it had either been hit with a herbicide or its stalks had been cut and allowed to dry in place. So that, and I knew from the permitting of the replacement septic system that that was also delineated edge of BVW. In fact, the BVW came up a little bit onto the mowed lawn area, which we see frequently, especially in older developed portions of Raleigh. So I actually had met with Mr. West and also talked to the commission. Mr. West was, Walter, excuse me, Mr. Walter was supposed to attend the commission's meeting of October
I think it's
26, 2010. It didn't appear that he did, and Mr. Farrick, in confirming with Mr. Walter that we had this exchange in the past, he didn't come to a meeting. So the commission issued an enforcement order specifically for altering by cutting approximately 400 square feet of bordering vegetated wetlands and the 100-foot buffer zone to BVW, which is a local resource area. Also contained, those areas are also within the 200-foot riverfront area of Ox Pasture Brook, so there's that kind of a dual level of their two equally protectable and regulated resource areas. Now, I did ascertain, Mr. Walter said he did not use herbicides, but he did say that he was cutting. So I have a field copy, my field notes, and these are from October 25th, the day before the meeting, where I met Mr. Walter and his wife on site. And we verified by measuring from the corner of the house foundation to the DVW flag A13 and to the area of A12. Mr. Walter admitted to cutting and removing overgrowths, mostly brambles and herbaceous vegetation, stated that he did not use herbicides on the vegetation. So I suggested, for consideration in him coming to the meeting the next night, that the area be allowed to restore itself naturally, so that we discuss this with the commission, and that it seemed appropriate that if 3 4x4 posts with no cut, no disturbance signs were installed, that would form an edge and mark where cutting was supposed to cease and let it regrow itself. That did not happen. And I lost track of it, but since I have things adequately filed, here we go, we've got it today.
Exactly.
What type of vegetation was that?
Combination of some wetlands, native herbaceous vegetation. You're probably better at this than I am. We got some.
Any invasive?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm
historically,
sure-
I don't know what it was.
Yeah, but I'm sure it was probably multiflora rose.
Yeah,
Would be my
most
guess,
common.
because there is multiflora rose around there. It very typically comes into the edge, and we've got sort of halfway abandoned agricultural fields, a little closer down towards the building here for it to migrate over on. But the point being is that it was delineated, it's in the record, an enforcement order was issued. We need to resolve the enforcement order. The proposal in the past is to install 3 no cut, no disturbance posts in lieu of the fact that this didn't get resolved and cutting continued even after my direct conversations with them. I would like to suggest that the commission would normally look to have a post and rail fence installed to actually form a barrier, because the herbaceous vegetation is not very resistant, it's not woody stemmed, and therefore it can be very easily weed whacked or mowed, and that's apparently what has continued on in this area. You're really basically talking, so the 400 square feet is kind of like here. And so if 3 posts are installed going across here over to where the large willow tree is,
Yeah.
that would mark the edge. It would basically protect the BVW, not taking away any buffer zone, but it would just establish that the BVW, which is supposed to be protected under the Wetlands Protection Act, from altering, filling, dredging, or removing, this would bring the property back into compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act.
And how much would said fence cost the person?
Probably not even more than the erosion control that is going to be proposed to be installed in place for this project. Although I haven't gotten any quotes on fencing, but
I imagine it would be, I mean, you
Couple
gotta get the
grand.
post hole digger and all that, so.
A couple grand, right?
Yeah, it would be more so an expense, I would say, more than posts, of course.
I don't know that it would be a couple grand.
Yeah.
Guess it depends what kind of wood,
Split rail fence?
yes.
Post and rail.
Shouldn't be that much.
Barbed wire would be a lot cheaper.
But not as aesthetically pleasing. Now, normally well,
I don't like fences myself.
right, well, but the problem is, we have continued incursion and cutting after they were cited for that with an enforcement order in 2010.
Right.
So it's an ongoing violation.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Walter wanted to express that, you know, he was told not to cut, and, you know, he understood that, but he didn't know he had to put it in posts. He knew it was recommended, he didn't know he had to go to the meeting, which I know it said it in the
It
enforcement
said it in
order.
the enforcement order, it's
I
in
mean-
black and white.
I mean, I understand him when I read them, but that was just his, from his side.
Right.
Theoretically, we could fine them for that.
Oh my gosh, the fine, I don't even want to calculate the fine.
I understand, I'm just making that point in terms of
Well,
vis-a-vis
yes.
the possibility of a relatively small cost per fence.
Yeah.
Howard?
So, and once again, for clarity's sake, so the fence is gonna be put there so that he really knows where the boundary is, cause he seems to have a creeping boundary syndrome. Is that a fair
Even,
statement?
even
Yeah,
since the
both.
delineation, you can see areas that
It
were
keeps- it
mowed
keeps
into the
creeping, yeah.
BVW area instead of a strategic retreat. And again, I understand, the reason that posts were talked about initially was that it was fairly evident, because the clearing had just happened, that you could see where the edge was, and we were trying to reestablish the edge.
So from,
This is what we very typically do for a plant community that isn't predominantly shrubbery with wooden stems, or saplings with wooden stems, that's not so resistant to getting weed whacked or getting mowed.
so technically though, the fence has nothing to do with the application. The fence has to do
No, the
with-
fence is trying
has
to
do with
resolve
the-
an outstanding
outstanding
enforcement.
enforcement order. I just wanna
Yes.
make sure we
Right.
Yeah, this,
understood what we were,
surfaced last week, so.
as a result of this.
Yeah, exactly, as part of
So
this
we're
filing.
dealing, are we dealing with both issues right now, or just the
We're
enforcement?
dealing with both issues because normally we will not issue a new permit
Unless they're enforced.
for development activity until the enforcement matter is resolved. And again, the documentation that they signed for and received, plus the fact that I had a visit with a face-to-face conversation with them, it's not the commission's responsibility to make sure that the enforcement order was dealt with. It's the property owner's responsibility to make sure that things are adequately closed out.
So if we were to say that we would like to close out the enforcement order, and part of that is to have this fence built,
Right. You've got.
then, do
You
we
have-
even talk about this?
You have two courses, oh yes, oh absolutely.
Okay, then we
But,
can go to.
so
that.
you've got two courses of action. You can issue a directive tied to the enforcement order that mandates that that fence be put in within a time specified. and have appropriate signage on it. So you can keep the enforcement matters separate, but you can condition that within the directive to say that no earth disturbing or construction activities will be signed off and approved, even if an order of conditions is issued, until the enforcement matter is closed.
Okay.
Okay, you can do that, that's one option. The other option is, within the consideration of this notice of intent for a deck and a screened-in porch, you can incorporate a condition that requires either posts or the post and rail fence, and mandate that, again, it be put in prior to doing any of the construction, earth disturbance, foundation work, or basically me signing off on the building permit for doing the deck and the porch. So there's two ways to handle this. But the main thing is that I believe, because of the property owner's actions, that there really probably should be consideration of something more than
Than
just
just a
3
post.
4x4 posts, because the mowing and the cutting did not cease.
Yeah, previous behavior does not seem
Well-
to indicate that.
And again, it's not meant to be punitive, it's meant to be a practical response to the continued mowing and cutting, by putting something that ends up being a barrier. If you want to, you could mandate, but this might make it more expensive, replanting of wetlands, woody stemmed vegetation to make some kind of hedgerow or whatever. But that, well, you're more acquainted with the economics of these proposals, so I
Right.
don't know whether planting a bunch of shrubbery would end up being cheaper than putting in
And
8 or 9 sections of post and rail fence, or rather?
I imagine Mr. Walter would want to be more in favor of a fence, just as his lawn is pretty small, so adding shrubs once they get up, he's gonna
Right.
be fighting against the hedges coming in.
Assuming the shrubs is your third option, I like the first option, and will so move that we proceed on that basis.
First
Which was-
option being what?
First option.
You wanna go over your first option again?
Which was to, what I understood.
Clear up the
enforcement
enforcement
order
order
first.
before anything else is done.
With a
Right.
directive for putting in the post and rail fence
Post and
with
rail fence.
signage. Okay.
And when that is completed,
When right.
then you would go back and look at,
The applicant-
Well, we'd still hear and act upon the order of
Yes.
conditions, but we issue the order of conditions and just not proceed with signing off on any building permits or inspecting the erosion control or whatever until such time as
step one.
the fencing, and retire the enforcement order. And upon that, issue a return to compliance letter, so it's very clear
Done.
that it got dealt with. Put them back on good graces, compliance.
And then they'd come back to get this?
No.
No,
Do
you
it
don't
all
have to come
tonight.
back. Nope. You can deal with both things tonight.
Okay,
It's just how we handle it, and that we handle both.
okay, gotcha.
Just as a point of interest, the applicant would have some financial flexibility by delaying construction of the screened-in porch aspect of this, and he's gonna do that at his leisure at some future time if he did not wanna do it right away.
That's true.
So I move option one.
Okay.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, in regards to the notice of intent application and the site visit that I held with Tyler. And so this is the rear of the property. They have a walkout basement door for their lower level. That's gonna be underneath the screened-in porch.
Correct.
And I had asked about whether they were planning on putting anything down under the deck, under the assumption that grass and other stuff is not gonna grow once this quote-unquote addition
Goes
of
on.
deck and porch is put on.
Right.
Did you get
Yep.
any feedback from
I
them?
did, so they're gonna be doing gravel under the deck,
Okay,
and there's also gonna be a stone drip edge that comes off of the screened-in porch, since that has the roof on it.
Yeah.
to catch the roof runoff.
I'm sorry,
Say that again?
what's on the porch?
What's under the porch?
No,
Oh.
what's on the porch,
On the,
or under the
oh,
porch,
on
or
the
whatever,
screened-in porch, since that one's covered,
right?
off of the edge will be the gravel strip.
Oh, crushed stone infiltration trench?
Yes,
Ah,
exactly.
okay.
Back edge or the side edge? Which way's your roof going?
So this is the screened in.
Yeah.
I'll be sloping away.
Yeah, so this would be, this would be sloping away to catch coming off of.
Yeah, here we've got it in the detail up here, yeah,
Yeah.
the ridge line is coming out perpendicular from the rear of the house, so.
It'll be
slope
shed
to either
both
side,
ways.
Well.
Any,
shit.
what were they gonna do on the ground underneath that at all? Gravel or stone also?
That
Or
would
they
be
have to walk
gravel,
up?
yeah, where that little,
Be a walkway is.
yeah, where that little door is now, there's gravel in there, but
Yeah.
they're gonna rework that, of course.
Okay, so basically gravel underneath all of the new addition,
Exactly, yep.
but with the supplementing of a crushed stone infiltration trench for the runoff on the porch.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there'll be a total of up to 14 footings for the combined deck and screened-in porch.
Okay. All right, and was our assumption correct there that those are those pedestal foot type things, so?
Yeah,
So basically, they're just digging some big
big
holes
holes
for
and lay 'em in.
sonotubes with whatever they call those things.
Yeah, just the precast footings.
So that's pretty much it, so, we sort of have standard conditions for this type of construction and, you know, dealing with the roof runoff and then dealing with some type of stable media underneath the deck, since vegetation is not gonna survive under there. That will provide stabilized soils in that thing, and,
Very little ground disturbance other than the
gravel.
posts.
we do have a file number issued for this project, but they still tag it as under review in there, on the DEP website.
Yeah, I think I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, so, but I don't think there's any, I don't believe there's any overriding environmental concerns for this work, because,
Do I hear a motion to accept that with all the conditions that we've put on it?
so, issue an order
Issue an order.
as discussed.
As discussed in.
I'll move.
Okay,
Second?
Second?
In favor? Aye.
Aye.
very good.
Thank you. And I'll be in touch in regards to when we're getting that fence in.
Yeah, I mean, share with him that the
Yep.
concern is to just have something in place that forms a barrier to define a hard and fast edge of mowing and lawn maintenance.
Do you want to put some of the markers on there as well?
Well, yes,
Yeah,
that
okay.
would be,
Yeah, we'll put it
that's
on
always
some of the
SOP,
posts.
standard operating procedure, usually every 3 we provide.
Yeah.
We provide those signs, so they're just the
Yeah,
little 4-inch white discs, so at the most, he might end up with 3 or 4, depending on how his uprights go. But,
perfect.
so, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Solve the problem, and once that's done, we'll issue a return to compliance letter, and come back to the commission and just confirm with them that all the enforcement matter stuff was done, so that we could close it out and give him a written record that it got resolved.
Perfect,
Okay?
thank you.
Okay, you would like some paperwork from me. Yes, you would. I would like some paperwork from
Augustine and Frocko own that brook area all the way down to the road, School Street?
I believe so.
Town has mowed it. The one
Oh, okay.
right, yeah.
Not according to this map.
What does this map show?
Well, maybe to the
Doesn't
middle
say
of
They
it.
kind of meet, they sort of meet in there, in the,
Yeah, I know the town's had me do it before, so.
I know my property my daughter rents runs down to it.
Same property.
No, this is the area. That's the,
Well, I know, but
Yeah.
that's his property, this guy's property, so, I mean, the brook is down here somewhere, it's under the line of the stream. Same property goes to the stream. There's another house up here. so.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because he owns the corner there.
Yes, he owns the corner. I thought that was narrow.
So he owns that corner too?
Mhm.
Good. How's this stilt house, non-stilt house coming down Stackyard Road?
Everything's fine there.
Yeah, that's good, I went by there today, yeah.
They seem to be getting the knotweed under control
Well, he asked me about that, so I sent him the email again.
again.
Said he couldn't find my email,
Well,
and
I
he thought
gave him a
the
copy of it
Fish and
too.
Wildlife folks were gonna be treating knotweed.
And
I
he said he
said,
didn't need it, so, that he already had it. Wow,
No, then he asked me for it, so I
how many irons in the fire?
Yeah.
I can't tell you one way or the other, just that he asked and I sent. Found it very easily, for a change, for the way things are going today.
Okay, brings us to a 9:15, which is the
Here's the 9:15.
firehouse.
Oh,
In the
okay.
9:30.
Yeah. Dear Brett, please accept this email as a request to continue public hearings, notice of intent for the application of stormwater management permit application on the above referenced property, scheduled for Tuesday, May 30th, to move it to the Tuesday, the June 20th, 2017. At this time, we are not in receipt of a first review from the town's consultant. Have any questions, do not hesitate to call. I would have been surprised had they got that far.
So this is combined,
Yeah.
both for the notice of intent and for the stormwater permit, it's.
So we'll put that, those to the June
Well, we
20th.
need- Yeah.
Need a motion?
June 20th, yes, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second,
All in favor? Aye.
right,
Does anybody know what they've gone through yet? What is passed yet?
I asked the planner last week if there had been any memo of questions or issues from their technical consultant, and he said, no, not yet, so. Our planner doesn't work on Tuesdays, so I
Yeah.
wasn't able to confirm with him whether anything had changed or not.
Certificate of compliance request. Continued certificate of compliance request. Kevin Capano?
Oh, okay, yes, all right. Just a second.
The ongoing saga.
Pardon me?
This is the ongoing saga.
Well, no, not really. So the posts are installed, and I think both he and I missed the part about a rock salt prohibited sign, and I didn't hear from him today, so he may be off and wasn't able to respond, but let me just get this thing. So he put in 6x6 posts. So there's no way.
That's a first.
Yeah.
Man, they're big.
Yep, they are. Plus, he also had put up the Jersey barriers, so people parking vehicles in the parking area wouldn't inadvertently back into that swale.
I think somebody had mentioned that when we were talking about snow removal too.
Yeah.
He was gonna
Yeah.
put up a barrier.
Yep. So that really worked out well.
So what else does he need for
Just needs to-
compliance?
Just
the-
needs to put up the rock
Salt.
salt prohibited sign, and I think he's got the same requirement that we probably issued to Mr. Dunn and the Dunn Landscaping, which is the new building on the end there, so I suggested to him in an email, like I said, I didn't hear back from him, but I suggested, well, if you wanted to just combine it and have it, there is a sign right up by the frontage there that I think is for Mr. Carpeno's place. So I suggested if you wanted to put a sign out there, or if we, originally, we kind of anticipated that it might just be along that gravel drive as it got back to this area where you can see
Yeah.
the telephone pole and you can see the gravel drive that's going to Haverhill Street, so
Yep.
it either could be positioned back there or,
So it's all well zoned too?
yes. Yeah. Yeah. So my suggestion for the commission is to vote to issue a complete certificate of compliance contingent upon verification of that one sign being put in place.
Do I hear such a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I think the final one, which is administrative,
Yes.
is
I don't want you to lose that.
10 West Ox Pasture Lane.
Okay, so let me just read right from this.
Yes, please, thank you.
This is a new certificate of compliance request, DEP number 63-511 for 10 West Ox Pasture Lane, map 17, parcel 18, lot 5, owned by Carrie O. Watkins. The request for return to compliance determination on enforcement order 63-194 of March 7th, 2006 on this subject address. I don't recall that.
Pardon me?
I don't recall this because that was before I was on here.
Oh, yeah, oh, definitely. So this inadvertently has been going on for a little while, and what I'm gonna suggest tonight now, my understanding from Williams and Sparagus Engineering Firm is they are going to be working on the survey for the as-built plan, which is what we need. I also believe they are going to issue the statement about whether the property's in compliance. And they're going to be field locating the granite bounds that were installed out there. This was back in the past when the commission, where it was pretty clear that you had a nice woody stemmed solid plant community, the commission would allow 4-foot granite bounds with a 12 to 18-inch exposure of the granite. Now, because of the passage of time and the different parties involved in this, something got lost in translation. And that is, as you can see from the corner here, that one of the earliest installed granite bounds was a 4-footer, and then somehow 2-footers got involved in here. So there's the 4-footer,
Nice and straight.
really solid. I wiggled it, nothing happened because it's way down in the ground. Whoops,
Where's your other 2-footer?
The other ones, the other three that got installed, unfortunately, as soon as I touched them, they just started rocking right over because there was only 6 inches of them in the ground. So that's why that one's doing an imitation of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and the other ones are too. Pisa, excuse me. The other ones are too. But they've planted the blueberry bushes. I think they planted blueberries, yeah. I suggest, or sweet pepper bush. Either one or the other is also a native plant that's in the community. So the enforcement order, with the verification of him fixing the bounds, which he said he was going to do, Ms. Watkins' associate, I told them I believe the commission would be amenable to directing me to issue a return to compliance letter once I had field verified that the appropriate sized bounds had been installed and therefore were solid and wouldn't get thrown or fall over. The original enforcement order really extended back to a no cut, no disturbance zone that in the commission's early history, they didn't monument, they didn't necessarily put anything in there to actually mark it or delineate its border. And that's why it inadvertently got mowed. And so the original enforcement order was for mowing of what was supposed to be a restricted no cut, no disturbance area. The mowing stopped a long time ago. In 2010, I think it was, when they came in to do the addition, we went out to address the enforcement order, put in wooden stakes. My wooden stakes were still there where these bounds needed to go, but things stopped and the bounds didn't get installed. But the mowing ceased, which is the important thing. So technically, they'd actually be over complying a little bit by putting the bounds in because the bounds are a requirement of the order of conditions. But that would consummate and totally complete the efforts that were supposed to be directed at marking and revegetating this no cut, no disturbance area along their driveway. So if the commission would direct me upon field verification of the proper bounds being installed to issue the return to compliance letter. Next meeting, I anticipate we will be seeing the as-built plan and therefore being able to entertain the certificate of compliance request and actually hopefully close the certificate of compliance because they are intending, I think, to close and pass papers on the property, I think June 30th, I think they told me.
Okay.
So we can have everything all wrapped up on the June 20th meeting.
That makes sense to me. Do I hear such a motion? Oh,
I've got a question, I guess. Why can't we wrap these all up tonight? Why do we need?
No as-built plan?
Well, if we approve that subject to your satisfaction in terms of receiving that, why can't we do the certificate?
Because you would be de facto appointing me a commissioner by asking me to fulfill duties that the commission is supposed to actually consummate at a public hearing. And you don't have any information submitted. You don't have the as-built, you don't have the statement from an engineering firm or a licensed land
And the
surveyor.
as-built is on the
Order of conditions.
location of the stone?
I'm sorry?
On the location of the stone?
Well, they're gonna put that on the as-built, but see, they hadn't done the as-built yet. They were waiting for him to put the bounds in.
Okay.
As well as the fact we technically don't even have the request for a certificate of compliance form filled out.
Okay,
So-
I will not argue the point, although I think we could theoretically do both and without.
You could, but I'd be a little uncomfortable if there was anything I had to discuss with you that should be discussed at an open meeting, that avenue would be closed off to
Yep,
me.
okay, no problem.
Do I hear such a motion?
So this is for
Yes.
return to compliance of the enforcement order upon verification of the proper bounds.
All right.
Being installed.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
I would second that.
Thank you. Thank you.
we need a continuance for the certificate of compliance request?
Well, as I said, they technically haven't even submitted it yet, so, and it's an administrative thing, so it's,
Yeah.
I'll just put it on the next agenda.
That would bring us to permits and or enforcement.
I have nothing, we've covered the various things. There are no other issues that I'm aware of.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.